Good evening all. Today we are going to discuss about causes of cell injury. Oxygen deprivation, that is hypoxia, is the nothing but deficiency of oxygen is the most common cause of cell injury. Okay, then hypoxia is caused due to ischemia, because ischemia is nothing but the reduced blood flow to the body tissues. That is nothing but ischemia. Here, the oxygen delivery to the tissues becomes less, and so cell injury may occur. So, inadequate oxygenation of the blood due to cardiorespiratory failure and decreased oxygen carrying capacity of the blood in case of anemia or carbon monoxide poisoning and severe blood loss. All these leads to hypoxia and ultimately cell injury. If we take physical agents, mechanical trauma or mechanical injury in our body, and extremes of temperature, burns and deep cold, sudden change in atmospheric pressure, electric shock and radiation, when all these limits goes to extreme, then cell injury will occur. Next, let us see about chemical agents and drugs. So, in our body contains glucose salt, which should be maintained in a proper uh, electrolyte and fluid balance. But if the concentration is hypertonic, it will cause cell injury by altering the electrolyte and fluid balance in cells. Even our own essential component for survival is oxygen. If the oxygen is at high concentration, also it is toxic. So arsenic, cyanide, mercury poisoning, and environmental pollutants, insecticides, herbicides, industrial and occupational hazards, just asbestos and carbon monoxide poisoning, all, and also consumption of alcohol, all these will cause harm to our body health and causes cell injury. If we take infectious agents, viruses, rickets, bacteria, fungi, and other higher form of parasites such as tapeworms, all these also will cause disease and cell injury. Next, let's see about immunological reaction. So, immune system is nothing but the ability of the body to fight against the antigen. So, injurious reactions to self-antigens. That is, if there is any disorder in our immune system, our immune system recognizes our own body cells as the antigen, and that is self-antigen, and they will start attacking our own body cells and destroy it, ultimately leading to cell injury. Next, we will be discussing about genetic abnormalities. So, for example, if you take Down syndrome, is caused due to trisomy of 21st chromosome, or sickle cell anemia, which is caused due to single base pair substitution in beta globin chain. That is, substitution of glutamic acid by valine 6th position of beta globin chain will produce highly clinical phenotypes, and genetic defects may cause cell injury, because if there is a defect in the gene, then the protein produced will also be deficient, and misfolded proteins also formed, and this leads to inborn error of metabolism and accumulation of damaged DNA or misfolded proteins. So all these trigger cell death when they are beyond repair. Next, nutritional imbalances. So nutritional imbalances is also one of the major causes of cell injury. Why? Because if you take a nutrient, we have two common nutrient deficiencies: protein calorie deficiencies, and then we have vitamin deficiencies. We have vitamin deficiencies. So in protein deficiency, the is found mostly among lower income population, because they, due to improper consumption of diet or protein rich food. So nutritional shortages can be exposed in anorexia nervosa. So this is important. Anorexia nervosa. What is anorexia nervosa? It is a psychological disorder of inadequate food consumption, and also you have to remember that. And then nutritional excess is also an important cause of cell injury. So if we take obesity, obesity is a common thing in United States, and is associated with increased instance of several diseases such as diabetes and cancer. So we should consume food at a proper limit. So in addition to undernutrition and overnutrition, the composition diet makes a significant contribution to a number of diseases. So diets containing higher lipids level will increase serum cholesterol level, and is a predisposer factor for atherosclerosis, and ultimately leading to cardiovascular diseases. And this atherosclerosis is the number one killer of adults in United States. Okay, next let us see about reversible some factors of reversible cell injury. So reversible cell injury is nothing but the functional and structural alterations in early stages or mild forms of injury. At the early stage of injury itself, the cells will undergo functional and structural alterations, and the damaging stimulus must be removed within the stipulated time. And then early alterations in reversible injury are like generalized swelling of the cell and its organelles, blebbing of plasma membrane, detachment of ribosomes from endoplasmic reticulum, and clumping of nuclear chromatin. So what they are coming to tell is, in reversible injury there should be early alterations such as generalized swelling, cell swelling, blebbing of plasma membrane, and the ribosomes should be detached from endoplasmic reticulum, and clumping of nuclear chromatin. So we saw first the cell will swell. If the cell is swelling, the water is coming inside, and this kind of swelling of cell is caused by the failure of ATP dependent sodium potassium plasma membrane pump. Why? Because ATP is reduced. We have see ATP is reduced. So oxygen deficiency is due to inadequate oxygen. There is a depletion of ATP. It interferes. This oxygen deficiency will interfere with mitochondrial oxidative phosphorylation, and also mitochondrial damage is also possible in this case in irreversible cell injury. That is also very important. Next, fatty change. Fatty change occurs in lipid metabolism organ, that is liver. So in toxic injury disrupts metabolic process and leads to rapid accumulation of so very important, accumulation of triglyceride filled lipid vacuoles. It's caused due to any inborn errors in lipid metabolism, and uh, uh, lipid metabolism takes place in liver, and due to some injury the liver may not function properly and leads to accumulation of triglyceride filled lipid vacuoles. Next, if the stimulus given to the cell is prolonged, then it might lead to irreversible cell injury. So irreversible cell injury is classified into two types: necrosis and apoptosis. So let's see the differences. So cell size, if you take cell size in necrosis, during necrosis the cell will enlarge, and during apoptosis the cell starts to shrink. And in nucleus the three phenomena occurs: pycnosis, karyohexosis, karyolysis. And in apoptosis it will be, the cells will be fragmented into nucleosome size fragments. If you take nucleus, if you take plasma membrane necrosis, plasma membrane is disrupted, or it is having openings, it starts to have openings and gets disrupted. But in case of apoptosis the cell membrane remains intact, so the orientation of lipids, everything remains unaltered. Okay, cellular contents. If you take cellular contents, due to enzymatic digestion, the substances or certain enzymes may leak out of the cell. But here, the apoptosis, the cellular contents are released in the form of apoptotic bodies. There is no leakage. So for necrosis, you have to remember that if you take plasma membrane in necrosis, it is damaged, and therefore, in enzymatic digestion, the enzymes or the digested products may leak out of the cell. But if you take apoptosis, the cell membrane is intact, so there won't be any disruption of plasma membrane. And since there is no disruption of plasma membrane, the cells itself will produce apoptotic bodies, and apoptotic bodies contain the contents of the cell. If you take adjacent inflammation, in case of necrosis, as the cells swell, the adjacent inflammation will also be frequent. But in case of apoptosis, there is no adjacent inflammation. Next, let us see a physiologic or pathologic role. So, it's usually pathologic. Necrosis is usually pathologic, whereas apoptosis is often physiologic. That means, if it is pathologic, then there will be a chance for irreversible cell injury. But if it is often physiologic, we are eliminating the unwanted cells and may be pathologic after some forms of cell injury, especially DNA damage. See here, we want to eliminate the unwanted cells in our body, but these cells might be pathologic after a certain cell injury, or especially due to DNA damage. So these cells, we should be very careful with these kind of cells. So that is what about necrosis and apoptosis. We will be discussing necrosis and types of necrosis in detail. Next, let's see cellular swelling. So it is the earliest manifestation of almost all forms of injury to cells. So when it affects many cells, it causes pallor, increased turgor, and increased weight of the affected organ. Next, the cytoplasm of injured cell appears red. It is called as eosinophilic, whereas which is stained with hematoxin eosin. So we know that the cytoplasm takes eosin stain, and since due to loss of RNA, there won't be any blue hematoxylin stain in this injured cell. Okay, so next we'll be discussing about what is hydropic change or vacuolar degeneration. So what happened is some clear vacuoles to be seen within the cytoplasm. But these vacuoles contain the remnants of endoplasmic reticulum, so that is called as hydropic change or vacuolar degeneration. That is very important. Next we will see about certain factors which cause cell swelling. So the plasma membrane alterations is blebbing, blunting, and loss of microvilli also occurs, and then mitochondrial changes including swelling and appearance of small amorphous densities, and also accumulation of myelin figures in cytoplasm, and also due to dilation of endoplasmic reticulum with removal of polysomes and nuclear alterations. Next, let's see about necrosis in detail. So, the necrosis and apoptosis differ in the mechanisms, morphology, and roles in physiology and disease. Okay, next we'll see about necrosis in detail. So, this is the diagram we have to remember to draw during the exam. This is for necrosis. Okay, let us see what is necrosis. Necrosis is a pathological process that is a consequence of severe injury, that is in irreversible cell injury, that is necrosis. So we will be dealing about necrosis in next part. Thank you.